So I just saw Spider-Man Far From Home, the latest Spider-Man film in the MCU and the last film for Phase 3. Following on from the path of Endgame, this is a film that we all needed. Getting straight into the pros and cons, because there's not anything a lot I have to say about this film. Sort of mirroring with Captain Marvel. There's not really a lot of details I could go into, because honestly, if I'm being very honest, this is a bit of an awkward time for me to do this review, personal life-wise. But I want to get my thoughts out there, and yeah, this is not too complex. Because at the end of the day, this was a very good film. So straight into the pros. All the cast in this do amazing jobs. The main cast, Peter, MJ, Ned. There's a reason I enjoyed Homecoming. It wasn't up there as one of the greats with Spider-Man films. I still think 2 holds a candle to that for being the perfect sequel, which has flaws, but it's still perfect. But this is a film that predominantly feels like a Spider-Man movie taking its next step, because with Far From Home, it pretty much feels like a different Spider-Man movie from what Homecoming was. It's a great road trip movie, and that's what I think we needed for Spider-Man with the MCU too, because every previous Spider-Man film has always been on a similar rail. It's been in New York, it's had a villain that we're all familiar with, and it's sort of continued the pattern of Peter struggling with life. And this film twists that a bit, but still acts faithfully to the character while having its own little spins to it. Back with the characters, sorry. They all do a superb job. I loved seeing them interact with each other. Ned and Peter's relationship is a lot of fun to watch, especially with the Kobi human moments that they do get together. And it's also nice that they know each other's secrets. We know he knows Peter is Spider-Man, so that leaves a lot of fun with it to be had. It's not trying to tiptoe around the situations. I also think Ned's relationship with Betty Brant was a lot of fun, led to some great humorous moments. Although, considering how it ends near the end of the movie, you could probably be it as a hit or miss, because considering the comics, I can understand probably why they wouldn't want to go straight into a relationship, because they are still kids at this point. But who knows? I just think it wasn't really needed for them to break up or just have a fling, or per se. I still think we're glad they did it. I still enjoyed their interactions together, and if they want to keep them together in the future, I'm more down for that. To the main thing though, with Peter and MJ, I really enjoyed Mary Jane's role in this. I really enjoyed her character. She was a lot of fun, and in vast contrast from Kristen Dunst, you definitely get to see her more be part of the story than just be a damsel in distress half the time, or a prize for Peter, as some would say. I enjoyed her because she really brought a level of interest to the character, while also being the friend and / the love interest. And that's kind of at the core of this movie too, because it's a teen drama about a boy trying to win the interest of a girl. For a direction of Spider-Man following Homecoming, with his lackluster relationship with Liz, I'm glad that they went into that next step. Although it could be a bit jarring because they didn't really acknowledge Peter had an interest in MJ in the previous movie. But that's probably a minor complaint, which I'll get to later, I guess. But it was great to see them two hang out together, get together in the end. And it was also great that we got to see her find out that he's Spider-Man. The only downside I would say is that maybe we could have gone a bit more from her, which again we'll get to in the cons. And then we get to the supporting cast. Happy Hogan, love him. He's great in a lot of his MCU appearances. But kind of unnecessary with his romantic fling with May Parker, who was equally a lot of fun and very funny in the film. But I think it justified him being there, although I guess they could have got around with it a different way. But his scene with Peter, very wonderful. Sam Jackson and Maria Hill, their roles in this, I think they do them justice, although you could say that Nick Fury isn't really Nick Fury, and we'll get to that. But yeah, he's definitely the grumpy grandfather of this, and a lot of his scenes are a lot of fun to see, just more in terms of the bigger world of the MCU. It's great to see Spider-Man talk with Nick Fury and mention other heroes. He serves his purpose to the story. but that's all I really have to say. There's not really anything too deep about it. It's just a lot of fun to see Sam Jackson reprise his role and be involved in a Spider-Man movie. Same with Maria Hill. And now we get to the villain. Of course, Quentin Beck, Mysterio. We all kind of knew from the first trailer that he was clearly going to be a villain. He was clearly just pretending. He was clearly going to turn heels at some point. But I honestly really loved the motivation behind his character and why he was doing this. And it's very in spirit to the character. Again, I'm not a comic book fan. I don't know every character's deeper mythology off by heart or even their names sometimes. But I know the basics of Mysterio, and I think this film pulled it off very well. And in terms of a modernisation of the character, it was great to see him have ties to the wider MCU as well, being involved with the Stark Industries beforehand, being the one who created Bath, and having that play into his desire for revenge against the world, essentially, and Tony Stark for basically forgetting about him and making him less important, and his desire to become the next hero for the universe after Iron Man's death. His interactions with Peter, for the first half of the movie, were a lot of fun too, because he really did sell me on being a hero and a mentor, and there was a part of me that really did hope that he would stay a good guy. And when it got to that point where he allegedly sacrifices himself, for a minute I was actually considering, are they going with this? Is he going to be a hero and die? And then maybe, if he is from another dimension, they're going to introduce maybe an alternative counterpart who would serve as the main villain for the rest of the movie? Which, in hindsight, sounds very stupid. But that's how I felt. I honestly felt... I honestly liked good Mysterio. But, as we all expected, he revealed himself to be a bad guy, and he honestly was a lot of fun. Jake Gyllenhaal, a very good actor. I know everyone knows he was considered to be the next Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2 after Tobey Maguire nearly stepped down, but he was perfect in this role. I'm glad he got to be in a Marvel product, and I'm glad that he got to play a role as different and as entertaining as Mysterio. And all around, that's all I can say about the movie. It's a lot of fun. It's a great teen drama, high school movie / road trip movie, and it plays itself well with its tones and everything. It does a good job balancing itself as a sequel to Homecoming and the aftermath story following Endgame. The story of Peter Parker struggling to come to terms and trying to live up to the weight and responsibilities expected of him after the death of Iron Man. And it's a very entertaining story, and it plays well with everything that was presented for it and how it could have been executed. And it was a very fun film. Not every joke stuck the landing, but if you're looking for a good blockbuster movie to see this July, it's got to be the first up there. But now we get to the cons, and kind of expected considering how some people have reacted to the Spider-Man films of the MCU. The comedy can be a hit or miss for some, depending on your stance for teen drama movies. And I think this also played Spider-Man Homecoming, but honestly, I can see that not everyone will enjoy this type of humour, this type of story being told, and the hype too, I think, will have a play in this, because coming off the back of Endgame, a very big and important movie for the MCU, people will probably be going into this thinking it's got to be this big, world-explanatory story that runs deep with emotion, with Academy Award-winning performances, and all that jazz that comes with the best movies of all time, or whatever. And I think that's giving it a bit too much praise, because at the end of the day, this is a Spider-Man film, a superhero film, and to some, they might feel a bit disappointed that after everything that happened in Endgame, to then close off this phase with this Spider-Man film, some will probably leave feeling a bit underwhelmed, or maybe even bored, again, depending on your stance for these kind of comedy movies. The other problem that I feel this movie juggles with is the legacy of Tony Stark, and not Spider-Man. Now, I understand this is meant to be a new iteration of Spider-Man. It's got to be different from the previous films that came before it, and from what's established in these movies with Spider-Man, he clearly looks up to Iron Man, so it makes sense that he would hold his importance and his role in his life more so, at least in current points. We know Uncle Ben's still alive. Sorry, not alive, sorry. We know Uncle Ben lived. He was alive in this continuity, and we can all assume that great power, great responsibility scenario happened before he met Tony Stark, so that's still there. They subtly drop Easter eggs for that in the previous film and in this film, so it's acknowledged. They know they happened, and we know, because it's common sense at this point. We know Spider-Man, we know his origin. But I think a genuine complaint some people who do have, which I do kind of agree with, is that this film especially, and Spider-Man as he's handled so far in this movie, in this series so far, he definitely feels like he's more of a glorified sidekick, and without the tech from Tony, without the guidance from Tony, he's not Spider-Man. Now, as I said, I can understand, but I do think that this is a fixable thing. They can make things more Spider-Man-esque, and that will go down to the third film. Which I can think of some scenarios for how they could have maybe handled this differently. An example being the illusion sequence when he fights Mysterio. Honestly, this was a great moment. I loved it, and some of the imagery and the message it was trying to convey, and how Spider-Man fought his way through it, but kept being faced with further illusions and manipulations. Very good. But again, it played into the legacy of Stark, and this could have been fixed if maybe they had a throwaway scene of Peter seeing Uncle Ben's grave, maybe alongside Tony's. If they acknowledged the responsibility and the origin, per se, of Peter before Iron Man came along, maybe this would have quelled some people's concerns with this. But as it stands, this film is predominantly about Peter coming to grips with the legacy of Iron Man and how he can't live up to that. And just acknowledging this at the end of the day, because again, on the fly with this review, but this film, it does alright with that angle it's trying to go with, and it clearly wraps up in a nice way to show us that Peter is trying to be the best him, not the next Iron Man. But some people will probably prefer that they step away from this going forward, which I fully agree with. And of course, the last con I have to talk about, which in of itself isn't that much of a bad thing, but more of just a direction thing, which I'm sure will hopefully be fixed in the next film. But the post-credit scene revealing that Spider-Man's identity has been revealed by Mysterio, courtesy of a great cameo by J. Jonah Jameson. So happy he's back. I do not mind this. It's a different direction than what we've had in any other Spider-Man movie. It's definitely got me and likely everyone excited for the next Spider-Man film. And as fears are going that the next film could be the last with Spider-Man in the MCU if Sony's deals don't go through into the future, which I really hope they do, this could make for an exciting final chapter. However, if we're keeping in the mindset that Spider-Man's doing good at this point, Sony is at a good point with Marvel and how things are going, so we can hope that they keep common sense and renew the contract so Spider-Man sticks with the MCU for years to come. This is something that I would prefer they kept through a future film, where Spider-Man is more established. Because let's face it, we all kind of, when we found out he was going to be in the MCU in Civil War, we kind of threw down the cards they're not going to do the unmasking Spider-Man bit, because the identity being kept a secret is an important factor in Spider-Man. And the fact that they're taking that away for the next film, it will be interesting. But there's a part of me that is a bit worried. I wouldn't say worried, but unsure of how this direction will handle the franchise going forward if it's permanently revealed to the world he is Spider-Man. They could play this with us, and it could all end in the third film with him switching this around so that we think that, oh, it's not Spider-Man, he's not Spider-Man, because he can get someone else to maybe pretend to be Spider-Man, and they can wrap it all up in the night bow like that, which could work, if it's pulled off well. But as it stands, for the wider world of the MCU and how it handles Spider-Man going forward, it's going to be an interesting direction if they stick with that. But I would have preferred it if they maybe left that along for a later point. But that's just me. Who knows? Maybe after some months, maybe after some weeks, maybe, of this review, I'll probably think differently. But closing off overall, I would honestly say Spider-Man Far From Home is a must-see MCU film. It's not the best they've put out there. It's not the best Spider-Man film out there. But it's definitely the best, in my opinion, the best July movie of this year. The best summer movie. It's fun, it's entertaining, there's a lot of fun weight to it, a lot of emotional weight, but a lot of enjoyment that can come from it, and a lot of action. Not a lot, but a good amount of action and spectacle. And I think overall, it's just a film that we need after the heaviness that we got with the last few MCU films, up or down, or whatever you think of them, and the emotional weight from Endgame. Yeah, I just think this is a good film, a fun film, an entertaining Spider-Man film, and you'll definitely leave the theatre with a smile on your face. So, this is Great Out Reviews. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.